You may very well look around and think, kind of a slow news week. You could think that if you'd like to be wrong. But what we have here today on Only Weird Games, we can finally get to the bottom of a story we've been reporting on now for a couple of weeks. And we have our number one dog pregnancy correspondent, Seth Keysor, joining us now here on Only Weird Games. Seth, thank you for joining us. The question on everybody's mind, is Kiko the dog pregnant?
Thanks for coming to me, Josh. We're here in the field, and I'm happy to report that, as is often promised throughout Scripture, the prayer of a righteous man availeth much. And I prayed the puppies away. The puppies. Now, hold on. Let me be clear. We're not taking a radically dark turn here. We're not taking a radically dark turn here. Kiko is not pregnant. The Only Weird Games watchers and voyeurs, etc., owe my dog some very serious apologies for some of the uncouth names that they were calling her. She remains pure, pristine, like the driven snow.
Does it only count if there's a pregnancy?
I'm going to have to read the Bible again, but yes, I'm pretty sure. So, man, I was pretty sure you'd go to the opening right there. So, no, Kiko, when we brought her to the vet, we were told, there's like a 15% chances of false pregnancy, which is apparently a thing in dogs. Didn't know about that. And I just will tell you, I have had some dark periods in my life. I've had some tough times. You can't be around for 40 years without having some tough times.
And the next 20 were even harder.
I don't. Golly, that was funny. But I can honestly tell you, I don't know if I have ever prayed as hard as I've prayed for anything. As Lord, you just let this be a false pregnancy, and you will not believe the level of righteousness I will attain. And I mean, maybe I'll get around to it at some point. It's probably just a coincidence. So,
Seth, can I ask you one simple yes or no question?
Of course.
Have you had Kiko fixed yet? Dear Father God in heaven, I just pray that Seth Keysor will miraculously grow a backbone, a spine of any sort in the upcoming days, week, months before Kiko becomes pregnant once again. I don't know if this is going to work. It seems like it worked for Seth. But
hold on.
Lord, you've given him all the clues, Heavenly Father.
I'm hearing something back from heaven. God just said, who's that guy?
It's been a minute. No, voyeurs, your prayers were certainly not answered because Nate Taylor is not with us today. Just myself, Joshua Brisco, alongside Seth Keysor. But Seth is back after a prolonged absence, learning some things, but not enough about dog pregnancy, apparently. Seth, how was Florida? I don't know if you want to talk about any of the other circumstances of being in Florida. I'm just glad when you get to leave the tundra that you call home and see the sunlight a little bit.
It was terrific stuff. We went to Pensacola. My son Mason, who's 17, is a junior, was doing a college tour. Wonderful college, beautiful campus. Really, really great stuff. I got to sit in on a class called corporate financing, I want to say.
Yeah.
And I actually learned something new about myself. I haven't attended anything resembling school since I graduated law school, other than continuing legal education stuff. I think if I could go back to school now, I think I'd really love it. Like in a classroom. So you sit down and this dude's like, well, first we're going to talk about, the difference between a broker and a dealer, what the NASDAQ means, how some of this works, and just starts teaching you stuff about the world. And you're like, wow, I didn't know that. Yeah. And it's not the internet, so you don't have to fact check it nearly as much. Right. You don't have to sit there and wonder. And they just tell you things about the world that you didn't know. And I was like, this is awesome. And fortunately for me, because Mason is a very studious young man, he thought it was awesome too. College visit went well, got to go to the beach a couple times, saw the ocean, which always there is a line where the sky meets the sea and it calls me. And I love the ocean. Jazz and I got to take a walk at 10 at night, and it was still nice. and it was lovely out. So I had a great time. I appreciate you guys picking up all the slack I left. I did have a return flight home. If you want to know, I paid dearly for this. My return flight home, I had 2 different layovers, and both of them our layover was between 45 minutes to an hour, which you're always cutting it real close.
Yep.
And so like
it's the anxiety sweet spot. You are in the anxiety strike zone right there.
Yeah, where you're just like, I'm pretty sure I can make it, but I don't know.
If I'm really stressed about it, I might be able to do this 4 hours from now.
If I get stressed enough, it's going to work. But I mean, like, so we pulled to a stop in Charlotte. So we go from the Panhandle to Charlotte, North Carolina, to Chicago, to Fargo, North Dakota. Okay, like, I mean, I'll do whatever, I guess. But like, Charlotte's airport was incredibly crowded. And when we pulled into Charlotte, we knew we had a short layover. The pilot just stops the plane and nothing happens for a couple minutes. And the pilot's like, attention, all passengers. We've got a situation where there is a gas truck just parked in front of us. So we're waiting on someone to come and move that, and then we'll get you right on your way. And I'm just like, cool. No doubt. Because running through an airport's always embarrassing. And so then when we arrived at O'Hare, which I don't know if you know this, kind of a big airport, because my thought was, okay, same terminal, because at least we weren't switching terminals, right? Because then you're hosed. Like, you don't have a shot. But it's the same. Not only is it the same terminal, but it's like the 2 legs of the terminal are like right next to each other. It's like, L and K. Good Lord, the distance between places at O'Hare is substantial. So I paid dearly for missing 2 shows. And I appreciate you guys carrying the load. But I had a wonderful, wonderful time, and I'm just excited to be back in the no longer frozen Great White North. It was snowing like a banshee the day we left. By the time we came back, most of the snow had melted. It was amazing.
I'm really happy for you. I'm glad that you've gotten to experience the joy that comes with that. And I'm about ready to make you earn your keep again, because I haven't watched a hot second of Walter Nolen. Why would I, Seth? You're on it. And breaking news / public service announcement / hey folks, you should have this by now. The KCSN draft guide is out. I have begun reading my version of the good book, which is the KCSN draft guide. You can get it right now. Gum.co. It's like what you chew. GUM.co/KCSN25. Will take you directly to the page where you can get the draft guide right there for $13.99. There's a little promo code that I'm personally invested in that's been around for years. And also there's an extra benefit to the Substack subscribers. I think vice versa also works the same way. Tucker, give me a big thumbs up if you can hear me. You can subscribe to the Substack and get a better deal on the draft guide, or you can buy the draft guide and get a few free months of the Substack, I believe. 3 free months. I almost said that, and I was afraid I was wrong, but Tucker said it was right. So lots of great ways that you can support KCSN and the incredible work they do over there. I also have been alerted to the fact that oh no, I don't think I want to trade up in the KCSN draft, Seamus. There's a lot going on, man. I'm learning the KCSN draft experience fast and hard right now, and I am the general manager of the Arizona Cardinals. But that's not the point. The point right now is to learn about our first draft crush. Seth,
yes.
You take a look at Walter Nolen. What did you, I think a lot of people will know the answer to this, but what do you take with you entering this series, entering this time of year? And then before you give us any of the details, how did you land on starting with Walter Nolen?
Before I go into the details on it, I started with Walter Nolen because I've seen his name connected with Kansas City multiple times, in terms of kind of always surrounded by the caveat, if he falls, right? If he, if he gets within rough range of Kansas City, because there are some people, depending on who you ask, and this happens with the draft every year. Oh, by the way, people should know, thank you, commenter Jake Dennis, Brisco Sucks promo code is active, FYI, if you're looking for a promo code for the KCSN. Now, you got to make sure to spell Josh's last name correctly.
Well,
that is with an E at the end.
I can never remember if it is with the E or without. Either way, it's hurtful. Yeah, promo code Brisco Sucks.
Yeah. And so that's how you really know good friends. They're the ones that hurt you a little bit, or even a lot sometimes, and it's always fun. So Nolen is one of those interesting prospects where, depending on who you ask, he is going to be drafted somewhere around 10. or he'll be in range for the Chiefs or even fall to 31, which just tells you everything you need to know about the draft, honestly. Because he's one of those guys where people be like, oh, there's some off-field concerns. And then you're like, oh, like, what are they? And they're like, well, off-field, and they're concerning. It's like, yeah, for sure. It's like, oh, just some character stuff. And then you're like, yeah, like what? It's like, well, just some concerns about off-field stuff. It's like, I feel like we've been here before. Now, who knows any of that, right? Sometimes that stuff just kind of stays quiet. Maybe it's just he didn't, maybe he was grumpy one day. I mean, these things happen. Who knows? But there's this just general feeling that he's a really talented player who may be in striking distance of the Chiefs. Also, the first Know Your Draft Crush article is always unlocked. This one's going to be as well, where I just kind of walk through methodology a little bit. And I thought Walter Nolen would be one everyone would want to read about. That way we can all get our hopes up. And then when he gets drafted at like 8, everyone can be like, Seth, you did this again. And I'll be like, yeah, I did. Sorry. How about that? So that's how I arrived at Walter Nolen. And then the second part of that is I think the most sensible place for the Chiefs to pick is defensive tackle. This draft is very deep there, very talented. And the Chiefs have Chris Jones under contract for a couple more years. They've got Mike Pennell under contract for a year, Jerry Tillery under contract for a year. They need dudes at the interior defensive line. They could survive 2025, but it makes sense of all the places. I know we're going to talk about their strategy next, but to me, defensive tackle seems like the most obvious place to go. So I'm starting with him, and then I'm going to go next to Derek Harmon, who's a player that people think is a little more likely to fall to the Chiefs at 31. And so I'm going to start with a couple of defensive tackles that have just been associated with Kansas City a lot.
I do want to, I'm going to play devil's advocate regardless of which side you want to take on the draft strategy thing, because I have just enough wiggle room to do that in an intellectually honest way, I think, on the defensive line, because I think they have some wiggle room, but I have arrived at this place now where an interior defensive lineman is by far my preference of in a vacuum, ideally all of this at 31. Now, we will say this in some version every single week or every show probably now until the draft, which is coming up. It's just around the corner. We'll probably cover this at every turn. It's never in a vacuum. You always have teams ahead of you that say they're going to draft the best player available, who then draft for need, and now somebody falls, or now more tackles go ahead, or fewer tackles go ahead of you than you expected. All of that shake up. There will always be some weird storyline of the first 30 picks, because, and even if the Chiefs move up, the first 25 picks, because these are teams that have been throwing up smoke screens and have their various needs and their own various delusions about where they are in terms of being a real contender or not, all of that. So I am very invested in the interior defensive line as my preference for where we start here. So I like that a lot. When you look at Walter Nolen, and there are a handful of guys that we'll work through, interior defensive line does not mean the same thing for everybody. Derek Nottie and Chris Jones I think they technically play the same position and really never did. Of different entire types of football players who just play a foot apart from each other. It is another reason the sport rules. But what kind of player is Walter Nolen from the 30,000 foot view? And then what have you uncovered throughout this process?
Sure. And so something to keep in mind as we talk about players, and I'll probably remind people a couple times until the draft. What is the date of the draft? I don't even remember.
26th, 7th, 8th, I think.
26th, 7th,
7, 8, 9, something like that.
Oh my goodness, I have so many prospects to look at.
Yeah,
so,
you really do.
I get started later and later every year.
Oh, hey, Seth, bad news. Sorry, 4, 5, 6. 24th, 25th, 26th. So,
okay.
24th is draft day.
Well, I'll get a half dozen at least looked at. So, the long and short of it is, when you look at college prospects, you're not looking necessarily for the same thing that you're looking when you are reviewing a pro's tape. So let's take, for example, what people might expect me to do when reviewing, say, Walter Nolen, is to do what I would do for when I'm reviewing like Jerry Tillery and chart wins, losses, neutral, against the pass, against the run, do those sorts of things. And there's value in that, right? That's how you gauge how productive a player is in a way that goes beyond the box score. Here's the reason why that doesn't necessarily work as well at the college level. I mean, the games that I've watched of Walter Nolen so far have been Arkansas, Florida, and Georgia. And then I'm going to be looking at LSU and Oklahoma. Here's the thing.
Excellent football teams. None of them have 5 starting NFL offensive linemen.
That's correct. And what's also correct is that you are going to see, like the difference between Arkansas's offensive line and Georgia's offensive line. There's going to be differences there. And those differences will be palpable. And you're going to mess with your formula, essentially. You're going to mess with your numbers if you're charting win percentage, because every now and then, even playing where he played at Ole Miss and all that, not just every now and then, usually he's playing against future insurance salesmen, or maybe at best a future XFLer or Canadian Football League or something like that. Now, that's not an insult. Still incredibly good, but it's not the same thing. That's one thing the Schwartz brothers have talked about this before. Jeff Schwartz did a really great segment on it once where he said, well, I mean, the problem is every week in the NFL, you are going up against a guy who was one of the 2 or 3 best players on his college team. Every week, 6th-round draft picks were one of the best players on their college team. The only exception to that is the occasional freak show teams, like, the 2016, I think it was LSU team, stuff like that. But even then, these guys, they're all so good. And so the difference in quality of competition there, and then also every team is so different in how they scheme stuff up, it doesn't tell you as much. So you're not necessarily even, yes, you rely on the film. Almost exclusively for me. I know people love to look at athletic matrix type stuff, and shout out to Ryan Tracy, who does a great job with it. And he tries to find ways that it measures into success on the field. And I think he does that better than anyone. But you can see athleticism on the field. Like, there are guys who run fast 40s that don't look that fast on the field. That's just how it is.
There are a lot of guys who are incredible athletes who can't put it together as football players.
Yep.
There are very few legitimate NFL prospects who are legitimate NFL prospects at the expense of any athleticism of note, right? Like,
exactly.
You're already tall enough to ride this ride.
Yes. We've kind of gotten there. And so the thing that I'm looking for, it's not necessarily productivity. The tape matters, but not to see how often they're winning or losing. You want to see how they're winning or losing, because everything is a projection. When I write about Chris Jones's film from 2024, which hopefully I get a chance to, I'm going to be talking about how awesome he was, which, by the way, he was again. And sure, we can project forward to an extent, but you're talking about how great he was. You're not trying to make a blind projection at the next level. What you're looking for is traits. What are the traits? And the trait isn't, oh, wow, he keeps winning against this blocker. Well, how is he doing it? Is he just executing the exact same cross-chop move against a guy that has never seen a cross-chop move before? Like, at least executed at the college level?
Or at a guy who is going to be a first-round, early second-round draft pick at the NFL level?
Exactly. Like, what, is he able to win in a variety of ways? Does his athleticism pop out in a functional way on film? Does he seem to have consistently high-level functional strength in his upper or lower body? Does he have a pass rush plan? What happens when he doesn't deliver the first punch? Does he have a backup move to free his hands? Can he push through half a man? Can he hold up at the point of attack? What about against double teams and combo blocks? All these things, you're looking for traits, not necessarily production. So I know that's a long road to a short thought, but that's so important. And it's different than what you do when you're watching pros.
Right. Let's stay here for a second, and then I'm going to take a little time out before you open up the Walter Nolen can here too. So, but with that in mind, I think this is a good primer on, here comes the first draft crush story, right? You also, not just you, but you can speak to this. I'm sure this will be true for you as well as everybody else. You strike out on draft projections way more often than you strike out on free agent contract projections,
yes.
Right? Now, like, Jalen Moore is kind of funny because he has very few NFL games, but he does have NFL games.
Right.
You are way more confident projecting his future than you are, I think, probably any tackle in this draft class, right?
Yes.
Because
their floor at the very least.
That's fair. And you get your Joe Alt, who you're like, I think his floor is very high and his ceiling is very high and all of that. But like, it is a projection. You have seen it, but with like an Alt, the reason you talk yourself into that is I think you have seen how he had won and who he had done it against. Right. And still, guys, rookie growing pains come for, as far as I can tell, everybody unanimously. Everybody has one of those stories of my welcome to the NFL moment, even if that guy was Myles Garrett's first, year in the league or whatever it may have been. So I do think that that's helpful. It's also, to me, as I do want, as a tiebreaker, the more athletic guy, because sometimes that can edge towards the ceiling, right? But this is also why I prefer a draft board with a lot of picks rather than one with not at the expense of premium picks, right? But I'd rather have my extra 4th and 5th rather than to use those to move up 2 spots in the first or whatever, that math doesn't quite work.
Absolutely.
But because even if you are 75% confident that this player, that Kingsley Suamata'i is going to be very good, or Xavier Worthy is going to be very good, if you're only 75% confident in that, that's great. You are saying there's a 1 in 4 chance this guy's playing left guard next year. Kingsley, not Xavier Worthy. I don't think they would have made that move with the guy who's 175 pounds.
I wonder what it would be like to actually watch someone die on the football field.
We've gotten close enough, actually, that I'm good. That is not a macabre fantasy that I have, but that is what Seth Keysor said. What I'm going to say is that we're going to take a break and then come back and talk about Walter Nolen.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Are you ready to win real money this March? Struggling to choose which team will pull off an upset? Forget about the teams. All you need to focus on are player stats to rack up big cash prizes with DraftKings Pick 6. And when it comes to the massive payouts, DraftKings dunks over all the competition. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. Track your picks for a shot to win huge cash prizes. It's as simple as that. All you have to do is pick which players you think will score, rebound, get assists, and fill up the stat sheet, and you can win. It's that easy. So turn your college basketball knowledge into cash today. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly with just a $5 entry. So download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code KCSN. That's code KCSN for new customers to play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited, 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promo.
The chat here, my mom said lots of, quote, older adults go back to college to stay sharp. Now medical experts have evidence challenging the mind in our later years by engaging relationships, walking and learning deters dementia. So Seth, I mean, you're probably a little bit past the deadline to get involved in that, but it seems like you could still be elderly and stay sharp.
Well, that's good news. I've been looking for something that makes me feel a little bit better. So Jazz actually had an incident happen. She was at the doctor for, I don't even remember what, like just some checkup thing or whatever. And she was talking about something she wanted to do, whatever. And she came home hurt because the doctor said to her some version of, yeah, you no longer have youth on your side. And Jazz was like, oh, and yeah. And I just, And now, she's fine, by the way, and hopefully she's fine that I'm sharing this. I just realized.
Yeah, I thought that before you did, but that's okay. It seemed like the train was chugging.
Nope. There's a life lesson here.
Hey, look,
18 years since meeting her, I've gotten way too comfortable.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. So
look, neither one of you have youth on your side. It's just a fact of the matter.
I think she just feels so young compared to me that she just seriously every now and then she's like, "You're 40." Ew. And I'm like,
yeah.
Hey, that really hurts. And she's like, I know, but it also really hurts how gross you are. And it's a whole deal. Fellas, if there's any youngsters on here, marry a woman that enjoys, youth is on your side. Marry a woman who enjoys picking on you. It makes life interesting, and eventually you'll learn to love it. I believe that's called Stockholm Syndrome. So that's just eventually where you get. I actually told her one time, I was like, you're going to give me some kind of weird, energy about being picked on. And I'm not sure how I feel about all this. I feel like I'm being flirted with when I get picked on. That's why I like Josh so much. I'm glad I'm alone now that I can find.
I was here the whole time. No, I've literally said almost exactly that to two friends last night. We were at Meet Mitch. I sent you a picture. Just so if you just want to think about how good that looked and the fact that I got to eat it and you didn't. And that entire conversation did happen.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I think at some point I just equated bullying with friendship, and now I'm here, and all of the ramifications that come with that. And I don't think it's, I'm gonna say air quotes, healthy, but we're recognizing that now, and I have most of my life to work out of that hole, and you have some of your life to work on getting out of that hole.
I'm pretty tired.
I almost kicked it a few years ago too. I don't get to talk that trash.
Yeah, I don't feel like that sounds exhausting.
Nate Taylor has the rest of as the majority of his life to figure out.
Yeah. And so it's anyway,
Walter
Nolen. So you're looking for traits, and most importantly, much like when you're looking
ideally
for a wife,
youth. I'll tell you what, if you don't have youth on your side as a draft prospect,
that's a problem.
Not a great start.
Yeah, that's not a great place to be. So the thing that you're looking for traits. You're looking for translatable traits. What I mean by that, like running a really fast 40 or being really fast once you're in the open field is a trait. Does it matter that much? I mean, it depends on the position you're playing, but even then, it's like you show me a corner who has like runs a 4.3 40, but his 10-yard split isn't very good, and he turns like a battleship on the field. That trait isn't really translatable necessarily. And those are the things to look for. So when I'm looking at a defensive lineman, I am looking for traits. And the traits that I'm really looking for, and this is what I'm going to do with every one. I try to have some continuity in how I do things. I'm looking at, as they relate to pass rush and run defense, upper body power, lower body power, their athleticism / burst, which there's a lot of different forms of athleticism, right? Like some guys move just differently. And then kind of technique, hand fighting, awareness, kind of, polish, I guess I would say. And some people are like, oh, well, we can coach that into them. Sometimes, but not all the time. If you've got a guy, there's a double-edged sword here. If you've got a guy who's absolutely raw, what a lot of coaches do is they're pretty arrogant. They're NFL coaches. They say, well, I will be able to teach him this, ignoring in some cases that, well, they've been at a D1 program for 3 years and it's not like D1 programs don't teach a Hamilton technique or or how to, effectively execute a rip move. Like, it's not like they're not teaching that. And if someone's not picking it up, that could be a problem, because we've talked about this before. The ability to process mentally and execute brain to body stuff in real time really quickly, that's a skill. Some guys have it, some guys don't. That's why some guys are pre-snap quarterbacks and some guys are post-snap quarterbacks, because not everyone can just process that quickly. But on the flip side, if you've got someone who's really refined in their technique, they may have maxed out and they're beating up on college kids because they are able to execute moves that these guys have never seen before, right? So there's just a lot to look at, but I generally want to see traits. I see the vision with Walter Nolen, and I think the vision with Walter Nolen is a less explosive Chris Jones. And that's where, like, athleticism, there's different kinds. He moves laterally very well. He doesn't explode off the ball, at least in the games I've watched so far. He's not, and that's something that differentiates him from Chris Jones. Although one thing to note, Chris Jones, if you watch him now versus watching him in college, I think he explodes off the line better now.
Wild.
It's a testament to how hard he's worked. He plays a little lighter now than he did then, but he also, I mean, that's a skill too. And so do you have the athleticism to improve your explosion off the line? Like, that was the FAU conversation, right? Like, this dude has the worst jump at the line I've ever seen. He looks athletic at other times, so you got to assume you get there. With Walter Nolen, I think he shows the athleticism, some lateral agility to where you think it can get better. But the big thing with him is he's got functional strength. So upper body strength, you're talking about power in your hands, power in your arms. Like, those are two different things, right? Can he freeze guys? Can he throw them to the side? Can he toss them? Can he club them? Those type of things. Lower body power, you're looking more at, does he have the ability to hold up at the point of attack? Does he have the ability to, when he gets to half a man, run through and around contact? So, cornering for an edge rusher looks one way. Cornering from defensive tackle looks another way because you're still getting blocked. Can you lean that shoulder in and run right kind of through him while moving him towards the quarterback? Think of how often you've seen Chris Jones still have a blocker hanging off him as he's still pushing the pocket and moving towards the quarterback. Nolen can do that. He's got very high functional power in his upper body and a fair amount in his lower body too. Those are the types of things you look for, and that's, I guarantee, why when scouts are saying that's a translatable trait, they see that and they think Chris Jones. Now, they both went to Ole Miss. I would say, just to get something out of the way here, I think Chris Jones's college tape was better. Just gonna get that out of the way.
They also didn't both go to Ole Miss.
Really?
Yeah.
Where did Chris Jones go? Mississippi State.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a big college football fan.
You know who went to Ole Miss, Seth? Who you might be confusing with Chris Jones?
No. This is really going to be bad for me, isn't it?
Breland Speaks. Never on the ground.
So Breland Speaks is a really good example of a guy.
Seth, is he more of a Chris Jones or more of a Breland Speaks in your opinion?
He's more of a Chris Jones than Breland Speaks because he moves a little bit like Breland Speaks, but he weighs like 30 more pounds than Breland Speaks. And
his name doesn't sound real to me anymore. We said it too many times.
Yeah, no, it's all over now. Next time someone asks me about speaking, I'll just be like, "What? Like, what?"
Oh no, you mean Chris Jones? You mean Jonesing?
Yeah. So there's a vision there for him, but I would say in advance, that upper body power, those really strong hands, those really strong arms, that ability to move guys, to place them out of position and get by them. That's something that he has, and he's got some lower body power to continue it. And that's something he has in common with Chris Jones. I will say Chris Jones's college tape, his upper body power was consistently shocking. And there's a difference. Nolen is consistently high level and at times shocking. That's the difference there. And that's where I see the vision there for him. There's a high ceiling there in terms of that's a translatable trait. I'm not sure if I love his film at this point though, or just like it, or even really like it, because he's consistently able to win one-on-ones. And it is worth noting, when they played good teams, they were all clearly like, okay, you see that guy?
Yeah.
We're all blocking him. But coach, what about, no, that guy doesn't matter. That guy is going to be selling cars in 6 months. This guy, which I don't know why it makes it sound like I'm denigrating certain jobs, but it's not being in the NFL.
Because they're not in college. They're not in college to be a paid amateur car salesman. So it is sort of,
yes,
it's not a compliment, I guess. So yeah, it's tough.
Greg Slayton just asked me, did he look better than Glenn Dorsey he did at LSU? No. Glenn Dorsey was unbelievable at LSU.
Yeah.
And then he hurt his knee and he never recovered his explosiveness. Glenn Dorsey, I will stand on a soapbox and say Glenn Dorsey had a perfectly respectable pro career despite losing all his explosiveness because he was so naturally strong. What made him different before that was he moved like Chris Jones does now in college and was freakishly strong. I just feel that's one guy. That's an underrated answer, by the way, to the question if you give one guy a healthy pro career.
Yeah.
That knee injury sapped him of explosiveness that made him go from competent to special because his LSU tape was unbelievable. So no, it's not as good as Glenn Dorsey's LSU tape, but that really shouldn't. It's Chris Jones's tape in college didn't look as good as Glenn Dorsey's LSU's tapes either. So
Glenn Dorsey went 5, so that happens.
Yeah.
Tyson Jackson went 3.
That was a whole nother ball of wax there.
Not as good as Glenn Dorsey's, despite going
right.
2 picks higher, right?
Yeah, his college tape is better than Tyson Jackson's was at LSU. And he's got some of the same functional strength, but he's more athletic than Jackson was.
I like that we're remembering some former Chiefs defensive lineman draft picks. This is nice, Ryan Sims.
And that's, so there's people are like, we really whiffed a ton of DL, didn't we? No, it's just the draft. People whiff a ton. Now, these are a lot of high-ranking draft picks.
Yeah,
I would say
3 and 5 hurt.
Yeah, those hurt, and that's the problem. Like, a guy like if you drafted Tyson Jackson or Glenn Dorsey in the 2nd or 3rd round, you'd be perfectly fine with them.
Oh yeah,
drafting them in the top 5, you're like, holy cow, that's.
Can I do a little memory jog for the people on 2009 real quick, though?
I love it.
Matthew Stafford, Jason Smith, Tyson Jackson, Aaron Curry, Mark Sanchez, Andre Smith, Darius Hayward-Bay, Eugene Monroe, B.J. Raji.
I guess
Michael Crabtree went 11.
That was not a good draft.
It was not a good draft.
Like, honestly, of all those guys, Tyson Jackson is like one of the 3 or 4 best players there.
Like Aaron Curry, he was out of the league in 2012, man. Jason Smith and Aaron Curry, this is just from Pro Football Reference, so I don't know what they did these years. Jason Smith at 2 and Aaron Curry at 4 were both out of the league in 2012. They didn't get second contracts for anything. Yeah. They did not play a 4th year in the league. That's incredible.
And Aaron Curry is a really good example of a guy who the athleticism wasn't quite translatable because everyone was sure. I wanted Aaron Curry in Kansas City. Everyone wanted that. They took Tyson Jackson. People were like, what? But man, who's the best player? Obviously Matt Stafford's the best player out of all that. And then it's like, they've got terrible news for you. That's a good example of how tough the draft is.
It really is.
To do this
all the time. Like, if they just trade up and if they could just pick top 5, I'm sure they'd nail the best defensive lineman in there. It doesn't always work out that way.
It
also,
does
just that draft class, Stafford's still playing, Thomas Morstead, and then it is punters and kickers until you get to Andre Smith, who played until 2021.
Wow. Andre Smith might have been a good pick there. He had a respectable career. So with Nolen, this is going to go up on the Chief North newsletter tomorrow. I've got a couple games left. I haven't quite made up my mind on him. One thing I would say, if he was in striking, if he gets to 31 and the Chiefs took him, good pick. I think he has a lot of the tools that you want. And his tape, when he's one-on-one, is solid. He's got some stuff to work on in terms of seeing blocks coming. He's going to play a more specific role for a little bit, but that's true of basically all these guys, especially at defensive tackle. You don't come in at defensive tackle a monster immediately. But I like his film. I think he's got potential to come in and be a solid to good player immediately, which is very hard to do.
I'm going to make you do this slightly differently here real quick. I am the general manager of the Arizona Cardinals in the KCSN mock that we're doing in the Discord right now. Why should I not take him at 15 or wherever I'm about to pick?
His tape isn't dominant, in my opinion. There's stretches of dominance, sometimes even long stretches of dominance, and it's tough to tell because of how much attention he gets. But I don't know what his plan is when he can't physically dominate.
Sorry, he went 5th overall in the KCSN mock, so I'm actually good.
Goodness. So I would love to see a little bit of a plan when he can't physically dominate. Now, that said, that's a similar thing to what people would have said, and I said about Chris Jones. some guys can just physically dominate at the next level. And you're hoping what you got to ask. So say so one of his trait would be he's got upper body and lower body power. Now he weighs a little under 300 pounds. So when I say lower body power, you don't think like, oh, nose tackle, hold up against double teams, the point tackle. No. Could he do it on occasion? Sure. If he sees it coming, but that's just something to keep in mind. The question you ask yourself, does it look dominant enough at the college level that you think that dominant trait will transition into the pro level effectively? And that's why, like with a guy like Jones, because he just threw guys around in college. You can fairly confidently say, yes, I think it will, because it's that high above the majority of the guys he's facing one-on-one. I think Nolen has that too. But again, why wouldn't I do it? I need to take a look at some of the other defensive tackles. There are stretches where you don't see a ton. And people claim that about Chris Jones sometime. I'm going to be real honest. If you tell me that Chris Jones disappears for stretches, I seriously question whether you've really looked or whether you're just kind of watching the ball during games.
I think definitionally, it is far more likely that you are looking away from Chris Jones rather than that Chris Jones has disappeared.
Yes. And so, those are, it's just kind of different things. I think his motor might run a little hot and a little cold at times. Like there are some guys, so like George Karlaftis, no matter how many blockers you throw at him, he's insane. He's just, I doubt he makes that noise, but that could be effective, honestly. Really freak guys out. But he is always just 110 miles an hour over and over and over again. You don't always see that from Nolen. Now, again, that's not a deal breaker for me with high level traits, because your defensive tackles, ideally, you're only playing them, 65% of the snaps, unless you're, Chris Jones at 31 years old, then you just have him on the field constantly, apparently.
Why not? Yeah.
But so those would be my hesitations. But at 15, I wouldn't scream if he was taken at 15.
But I always am curious about we always talk about there being tiers of players or tiers of players at position groups. I want to, that's maybe the curiosity of mine that's grown more and more over the years is tell me why this guy belongs in this tier and not this tier, or, vice versa. And so I think we're off to a good start there. We'll use that methodology and kind of have that be the baseline for the rest of the guys we talk about throughout this series. And that should be up in the Chief from the North newsletter tomorrow. If you want to read along, mnchiefsfan.substack.com. And you can subscribe for no money ever. So that's available. Actually, that'll be unlocked for free. So that one's actually true. We touched on this at the top of the show, though, Seth. When you are kind of zooming out and looking at the Chiefs' overall options at pick 31 overall.
Yes.
You tell me where you think the Chiefs stand, what you think makes sense, and in one way or another, I'm going to pick a way to take a slightly different angle and play a little devil's advocate.
I personally think that the Chiefs would do well to donate significant amounts of money to charity and care about children and puppies.
That's a great idea. Can we get a realistic one?
I was just waiting for you to play devil's advocate. That's like literally playing devil's advocate there.
I guess that
on the flip side.
Well,
No.
You're asking Clark Hunt to do a lot of things he's not currently doing. Are you calling Clark Hunt the devil?
Oh, good Lord. So anyhow, the thing with the Chiefs that I think is interesting, we've talked about this a little bit, especially now that they brought back Mike Pennell.
The Chiefs are probably donating money. I'm sure there are charities that get funded in some way or another. Derek Notty's not here anymore, though. He was doing the dog funding. That was a Derek Notty thing, and he's gone. I personally, Joshua Brisco, and all of KC Sports Network, none of us think that Clark Hunt is the devil. Just like disclaimer, please don't comment and say, why did Seth call Clark Hunt the devil? Please don't call BJ and be like, hey, man, you got to get this show wrangled.
Maybe do that.
No, don't do that either. Just not today. Wait until Thursday. wait until whatever we say on Thursday. Let's not make this one that one. Okay, go ahead, Seth.
That's fair. So
hey, Claude, that's for you too. I don't want to see a social video.
Claude, relax.
Of Seth going, Clark Hunt is a great philanthropist and football team owner, and man, I said I was pretty critical last week too of the whole schedule thing, so I feel like I'm in thin ice.
Oh, sure, Seth. Yeah, you're trying to slowly. Oh yeah, I heard that you guys hate Christmas. It's weird.
You heard that we hate Christmas? That was how you read through that?
I'm sorry. I meant. I please no. Let's not do this. I'll engage in bad faith with you when we're done recording.
You actually have to do it the next topic on the rundown, but we can do it after this.
Yeah. So here's the thing. They've brought back not just Charles Omenihu, which was very necessary. We all celebrated for good reason. They brought back Mike Pennell, which means, you still need another nose tackle, but it's no longer like this desperate gaping void. They actually brought back Mike Edwards, which is a good, I think, safety plan, no pun intended. Signing Christian Fulton, brought back Nick Bolton. Really, there's no glaring holes on the defense other than like defensive tackle youth and depth, right? I think their defensive line is better now than it was this time last year because Omenihu's healthy. Very different thing. And so, yes, there is the Hunt Family Foundation. I'm sure they give a ton of money to charity.
I don't want to go too far the other way here either, Seth. I want to play the perfect middle.
I like it. So they give an appropriate amount, but not as much as would be amazing.
I am a Seth Keysor level neutralist on this one. I am on the fence. I am wrapped around the fence post like an animal afraid to fall off. I am on that fence like a possum.
You will not get me to take a stance on this, sir.
Not today. I'll save it for a time when I feel like it's more justified than that one.
And the Chiefs, the last couple of years, wide receiver has been like, guys, we need to take a wide receiver in the first round. Like now, maybe the second round, but seriously, the first round probably, especially last year. They don't need that this year. I mean, they could. And by the way, if they do, I see someone talking about Luther Burden at 31. I'm going to look at a couple receivers, him being one of them, partly because obviously there's an overlap of people that are interested in that because there's a lot of Mizzou fans that are Chiefs fans, but also because he looks like a really, really fun player. And that would be really cool.
Shh, not so loud. He looks like a bust.
Yeah. I've heard there's off-field concerns.
Late second rounder, probably.
So, but with Rashee Rice, there may be a suspension forthcoming. With Hollywood Brown, with Xavier Worthy, and with time to really develop the plan. I wrote about this, 2 weeks ago. We talked about it. I think they are comfortable with the plan they have. They've got the 2024 plan in the hopper for 2025, and it's actually a pretty good plan. I like the way the guys complement one another. Great. But you could still take another receiver, given Hollywood Brown's only there for a year. Rashee Rice is facing suspension. You can never have too many good receivers. There you can justify it. Offensive line. There's questions about the left side. Jalen Moore, they gave a decent contract, but not a huge one. I like this tape. I can see if they think, hey, you know what? We think this guy has a decent floor and a ceiling that's a little higher than what he's done. That answers our questions at left tackle. And we think Kingsley Suamata-Ia, who's like an upper 99th percentile size athlete guy at left guard, we think we can do it. Fair enough. But also, like if who's the guy, the OSU guy that got hurt?
The tackle, Simmons. If he falls to 31 or someone else that you would usually not get a shot at, I'm not going to fight you on that. Jawan Taylor's going to be off the team probably in 2026. Yeah.
So long road to a short thought. You could justify several different spots to pick, but none of them do you need to pound the table and scream you need to in the first round or even the first and second round. So that's kind of that's an interesting place to be. And so they really can. Everyone, the dream is, everyone always says, best player available. They don't always do that for obvious reasons. Yeah. Otherwise, you'd see running backs and centers go more frequently.
A lot more guards. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, a lot more guards, a lot more off-ball backers, that kind of stuff. So that's Angry Drunken German says, I wouldn't cry about a halfback after round one either. I think part of it for me depends on how much they think Isaiah Pacheco not performing as well last year was him not being as explosive at the injury. It clearly affected him. But I do agree with that too. I would love to see an infusion of speed and talent there. But you can go a lot of directions. They've got a lot of freedom to do it. And that, to me, it's kind of like, if I were them, I would narrow it down to 4 or 5 positions and just take the best player who falls at that.
So I thought that was what you were kind of coming in with, and I agree with 95% of that. The little bit of a tweak on that I am second guessing now, as we've spent a lot of this time the last few weeks talking about the defensive line, the defensive end position is ready to go play football games, and I think ready to go play a season, right? Yep. You have starter plus snaps from George Karlaftis, starter snaps in my book, in your book, for Charles Omenihu, heavy rotational inside-outside snaps from Mike Dana, and Felix Udike-Uzomah needs to play. I don't know if you listened to last week's episode at all, Thursday's episode, but apparently that's the plan. If he's DE4, then he'll be in the mix. If he's DE5, it's going to be a little bit of a longer road. But he's there, and he's got some long-term upside just because he's on the team still, right? So I'm comfortable with defensive end in 2025.
Yes.
In 2026, that group gets a lot thinner. That Mike Danek contract will be gone. Charles Omenihu, who's on a 1-year deal. Karlaftis will still be around, but you see the end for him unless you're in serious contract negotiations. Don't know. And then now you're banking on, like, is Felix going to prove this year he's a starter in 2026?
Right.
Got to show a lot of growth. Now, look, you can just take a defensive tackle next year, or you can sign one in free agency next year. I am long-term. I am 2025 totally happy with defensive end. Good enough for me. I don't think I can say the same for defensive tackle. And they have an even bigger long-term issue than defensive end, because you do have Karlaftis and you might have Felix for a little longer. It's Chris Jones and the 1-year deals. And right now, just in 2025, Marlon Tuipulotu is going to play 40% of the snaps on the current depth chart. I don't think he's going to. I'm happy for them to give him some reps. I think him staying around after being in the building last year makes perfect sense. But you are relying you have an entire position, an entire depth chart that is Mike Pennell and Marlon Tuipulotu. If that's one of your 11 on defense, even if they play next to Chris Jones and beside George Karlaftis or Charles Omenihu, and Mike Danek can obviously rotate in and do some of that stuff as Omenihu can, that group doesn't have quite enough juice for me. So even longer road to an even shorter thought. I'm starting to get to a point where defensive tackle is 1-1, defensive end might be 1B. And then you got a lot of best player available stuff right below that. Not in a desperation mode. Don't take the 6th best defensive tackle if 5 went ahead of you. But if that, I'm picking random numbers, but if they get to a point where they don't have a defensive tackle in the first 2 rounds of the draft, I'm going to be pretty disappointed. Like, not that they did something terribly wrong, but like, man, that's kind of a bummer. I thought they were going to find a solution, at least in those first couple days of the draft. So that's my little bit of a, I'm not really the devil's advocate there. I'm kind of a neutral person advocate there.
I like it. Feels good, doesn't it? It's like sliding into a warm bath.
It's not. Like, no, I hate it. No, Seth, I cannot stress enough. I do not like this feeling.
Oh, right. Sliding into a warm sauna?
Sliding into boiling hot water.
Oh, yeah. No, warm. Okay. Sliding into a jacuzzi that's so boiling hot, you're pretty sure it violates some part of the Geneva Convention.
Somebody delimited this hot tub. It is so hot in here right now. Somebody took the constrictor plate off this thing, and I am boiling alive in here.
Oh, and it's just the best, isn't it? Barely taking a position, because that way, you know what you can do? You can just, anytime you want, just whoop, and here I am now. No, I'm with you. It's beautiful.
I don't like that. I think they can take the best player available, but I'd prefer if the best player available was a defensive lineman. That's my take. Seth, rapid fire here. A couple of things. While you were out, a few things happened. This is the Seth check. I'm just going to ask you about some things that Nate and I talked about that we haven't really talked about yet. Mike Edwards back. The safety room seems set. I mentioned this with Nate that I do think it gives them a little wiggle room if they kind of screwed up Shamari Connor, or if they have a totally different view of what he is as a player now, because he had a totally different role last year than he had as a rookie. But they've got some wiggle room. Mike Edwards essentially sets that safety group. How do you feel about Edwards being the guy who's back? How do you feel about him being back? And then where that leaves the group now?
I used to say about Dan Sorensen before the last year of his career, where the bottom kind of fell out for him, maybe the last couple of years. I used to say about Dan Sorensen that he was a roller coaster guy. You got to be this tall to ride the roller coaster. Mike Edwards is a guy where you want to play safety for the Kansas City Chiefs in 2025. You need to be average or better. You need to be competent or better, because Mike Edwards is competent. He's played in this defense. He played competent. Actually played pretty well, honestly. Like, he is not going to be an easy guy to beat out for a spot. So this is like, and he's also a slightly different type of player than Jaden Hicks. And even a slightly different type of player than Brian Cook and Shamari Connor. He's not necessarily a single high deep safety, but he can play it in a pinch. That's kind of important, because you can argue they don't really have
who else is doing that.
Yeah, they don't really have a true free safety. Brian Cook has the best closing speed, but that's not his best usage. So I love it. I think it's a great fit, and it does force Cook low key, because the focus is on Connor. But Cook has been inconsistent at times.
Yeah.
And so it forces them to say, hey, you got to play at a certain level here if you want to get a ton of snaps. Because now you've got 4 guys in the room, all of whom have shown flashes, and Edwards has been consistently good in the defense. So I love it.
Week 1 in Brazil, not officially yet, but Nate had the scoopage on that. Friday night, week 1 for the Chiefs. That make you feel anything?
I don't know. It's always weird, the international games. I get why they're doing it. It'll be less weird time zone wise, I'd assume.
And I think I'm going to say, I don't think I said this at the time. I think I prefer it to be in week 1 if I get the option. Standalone Friday night game. Weird, but eh.
Yeah, weird, but I think so much about this stuff in terms of what provides a competitive disadvantage or advantage that I would rather get it out of the way early. They survived that brutal Christmas stretch.
So Seth, since I'm sorry to cut you off, but since you talked about, I think, kind of voluntarily seeking out something that could be viewed as a competitive disadvantage for the rest of natural time, as Nate reported, that the Chiefs are looking to be a constant in the Christmas Day slate of games that the NFL will, of course, never let go of ever again.
No.
Seth,
sorry, NBA. You had a good run.
Take your pick. The Chiefs or Christmas?
If I have to pick one,
yeah.
I still got Easter, so. Theologically speaking,
Easter's much more important. Everyone ever has been born.
Yeah, I think we can all acknowledge. Yeah. Theologically speaking, without Easter, Christmas is like, oh, that's great, but
that's
also
guy's birthday.
Yeah, it's great, but
and
also,
not even, by the way.
Yeah. What are all the? Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, we could go down that road, but we don't need to. So
we're going to hit an hour today anyway. I told Tucker I really didn't think it was going to happen. We're 100% going to do it.
It's funny because I've heard April and I've heard September, and I'm like, I just don't think we quite know for sure, but whatever.
No, I think if we look hard enough, we can find out the day that Jesus Christ was born.
Yeah, 2,000 years ago. We'll nail this on the dot. So
let's not say nail this.
That's terrible and funny.
I saw Tucker's face in the bottom. You can't see, but I saw how Tucker turned at the camera and laughed at that joke, and that made me feel good.
Oh, good. So golly, that was funny. So the thing with the Christmas games,
I'm gonna go ahead and take football because I don't think I can do any amount of Christmas loving that's gonna turn that one around for me. God,
that's true.
Gosh dang it! Damn. Shoot.
Yeah, it's over now. I asked and he said, so he's like, oh yeah, there's nothing that can separate you. Oh no, I was wrong. It actually is right there. There it is. Josh Brisco, 2025. I have a slightly unpopular take. I think I don't mind the Christmas games, but again, doing what I do to cover the Chiefs, I don't have to be there like Nate does. It takes 3 hours out of my day, and then I power everything down. Maybe when the kids are done being hopped up on sugar and greedy from presents and all that stuff, they go to bed early and maybe I write something. Maybe I don't, it just doesn't affect me that much. And so I don't mind it that much. I'm a deeply selfish person in case, so I mean, it is nice to have something to do. The only thing is that occasionally, not all family members that you have view football the same way.
Yeah, correct.
And so you can find yourself in this last Christmas. It didn't really happen because they were clearly better than the Steelers start to finish. The Christmas before that with the Raiders game, you end up in some conversations where you're just like, nope. They weren't supposed to give the other team the ball like that. Yeah, you're right. That is bad. It is
weird that the Raiders haven't thrown a completion in 45 American minutes. Yeah, it's strange.
Is that normal? No, that's not normal. Thank you for asking. They do normally play better than this. Yes.
I'm going to go upstairs and eat coal.
Yeah. I am going to bring me all the mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
And then so the rounds.
All the mashed potatoes you have.
I'm afraid you misheard me. And you're thinking there's 7 pounds of mashed potatoes. There's no possible way. I said, bring me all the mashed potatoes and that stick of butter And you know what? Let's just throw a salt lick in there.
So I guess what I've figured out, Seth, is you don't really care because your plans don't change either way.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good analysis. Because if they win, if they do well, I mean, you got to
Celebration
celebrate.
potatoes.
Celebration potatoes. I don't drink. I got to celebrate somehow. And fortunately, Scripture doesn't say anything about gluttony, so I just eat as much as I want.
It's so weird. It does not come up.
Oddly silent on that subject.
Yeah. Gluttony and greed are two things that, as far as I've been able to tell from the last 30 years or so, do not get mentioned. Well, Seth, we've gone over an hour, and that is not something anyone asked us to do, but we did it anyway. I'm going to say again, the KCSN draft guide is out now. You can go grab it. Promo code Brisco sucks for $1 off. gum.co/KCSN25, gum.co/KCSN25. And it's an unbelievable resource. Seth, check out the private chat. No, that one was just, I decided to leave that one just for you, Seth. So
I appreciate it. It made me laugh.
Good. That's what we're all here for. Ideally, I guess. I don't know.
To make
if
me
you
laugh,
learn something,
I agree.
I do kind of think there's unfortunately some truth in that. We are the captive audience. I mean, you know how bad I needed more validation during today's show with just the two of us is I was looking to Tucker to see if he laughed when I said funny jokes. Like, I desperately needed another sounding board. Like, yes, Josh, you're being funny.
Yeah, I'm not. At some point in our relationship, I stopped being enough for you. I'm not sure when that happened, but it took a lot.
You say Jazz and I have a lot in common. We'll talk to you on Thursday.
Oh, man.